She said my name like it wasn't supposed to leave her lips. Soft, careful, almost guilty. That was the first moment I realized how quiet her house really was. Every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, the shift of her breath, seemed to stretch between us. She stood by the window, one hand curled around a half-empty mug, her shoulders catching the evening light. Mrs. Hale. My neighbor. I should have left after fixing the fuse, but she didn't tell me to. She just kept talking, about the storm that had knocked the power out, about how she never could get the breaker to stay on. I answered, but I don't remember what I said. I only remember her voice, how it dipped when she wasn't sure if she should keep going. She was 46. Confident, yes, but not in the way that draws attention. It was quieter, the kind of confidence that came from someone who'd stopped trying to impress anyone years ago. Her hair was still damp from the rain, loose against her shoulders, and her shirt clung to the outline of her back where she leaned against the counter too long. I told myself to look away. But she smiled. Electricity's back, I said, forcing a small laugh. She murmured, still looking at me. You're good at fixing things. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. A pause before things, as if the word carried more than it should. My hands were still dusty from the fuse box, but she handed me a towel anyway. Our fingers brushed, lightly, intentionally, maybe neither. Thanks, I said. She nodded, not moving her hand. The towel stayed between us for a moment longer than it should have. And then she pulled back, laughing softly at nothing. The kind of laugh people use to hide that they're thinking about something they shouldn't. I found myself studying everything, the chipped nail polish on her thumb, the way her sleeve slipped down her arm as she reached for the switch, the scent of something faintly floral, clean, familiar. Do you ever get lonely here? I asked before I could stop myself. The question hung there. Too honest. Too close. She didn't turn around. Sometimes, she said quietly. But it's peaceful. I didn't know if she wanted me to hear the rest of what she didn't say. Peaceful didn't sound like what she meant. I guess I like quiet too, I said. Do you? She asked, finally looking at me. Her eyes softened, curious, unreadable. You don't seem like someone who does. What do I seem like? She smiled again, just enough for the corner of her lip to curve. Someone who listens too hard. Her words landed somewhere between tease and truth. She stepped closer, not much, just enough that the air between us changed. The faint warmth of her body reached me before her hand did. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, but her gaze never dropped. Can I ask you something? She said, her voice lower now. Anything. Why do you always look like you're about to say something, but never do? The question caught me. I didn't know how to answer without telling her everything, that she made silence feel full, that I couldn't step into my apartment without wondering if she was awake next door, that I noticed when her lights went out at night. Instead, I said, maybe I just don't want to say the wrong thing. Her breath hitched slightly, so small I might have imagined it. She took a step closer, her fingers grazing the side of the counter beside mine. Sometimes, she whispered, the wrong thing is exactly what someone needs to hear. And just as the words hung there, just as her eyes lingered on mine, the sound of a key turning in her front door broke the air clean in half. She froze. I did too. The mug on the counter trembled. Then she whispered, softer this time, almost to herself. Don't say anything. I didn't see her for 2 days after that night. The silence between our doors felt heavier than usual, like even the air in the hallway remembered what almost happened. On the third evening, I found her outside, sitting on the small steps by her porch. Bare feet, wine glass in hand, hair pulled up loosely. She looked like someone who didn't plan to be seen. When she noticed me, she smiled, polite at first, then softer. Hey, I said. Everything okay with the power? She laughed quietly. Still holding up. I think you fixed more than the fuse. I wasn't sure what she meant, but it stayed with me, the way her voice dipped at the end, half teasing, half confessing. I sat on the step below hers, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her legs through the cool night. Long day? I asked. She took a slow sip, then nodded. They usually are. School meetings, emails, pretending I know what I'm doing with my life. Her honesty startled me. I turned slightly, searching her face. She noticed. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you think I have it all figured out. She stared into her glass, swirling what was left. I don't. Haven't for a long time. There was something in her tone that made me want to reach for her hand, not out of desire, but to anchor her somehow. I didn't. She looked up. You live alone? Yeah. Girlfriend? No. Her lips curved faintly. You say that like it's a story? It's just complicated. She raised an eyebrow, waiting. I was with someone for a while, I admitted. But I think she wanted someone older. Someone more certain. Her expression softened, but her voice didn't. Certainty's overrated. I laughed under my breath. You sound sure of that. I learned it the hard way. There it was, the quiet ache in her words. The one she hid behind calm gestures and half smiles. I didn't ask for details, but she offered one anyway. My husband and I divorced 5 years ago. He fell in love with someone else, and I fell in love with the quiet after he left. The honesty of it hit me harder than it should have. Sorry, I said. Don't be, she murmured. It's just strange, how empty starts to feel familiar. We sat there for a while, not speaking. The crickets filled the silence for us. The night smelled faintly of rain and jasmine. When she leaned forward to set down her glass, her shoulder brushed mine, barely, but long enough to send a ripple through my chest. She didn't move right away. I could feel her breath near my neck, warm and uncertain. You shouldn't stay out here, she whispered. Why not? Because if you do, her voice faltered. Someone might see what they shouldn't. She stood slowly, gathering her composure like a fragile thing. Good night, she said, except it didn't sound like goodbye. As she turned to go inside, her hand lingered, just briefly, against my arm. Not a touch of affection, not quite restraint. Something in between. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And before she closed the door, she looked back once, her eyes meeting mine through the dim porch light. That glance said everything words couldn't. This shouldn't happen. But it already is. Rain again. It always seemed to find us. I was halfway up the stairs when I heard her voice through the open hall window, soft, distracted, talking to someone at her door. I slowed without meaning to, catching fragments. A friend's voice, maybe a coworker. Then laughter. Hers, light and practiced, the kind people use when they don't want to explain what's really going on. When I stepped into view, she caught sight of me from across the hallway. Just a flicker, her gaze lingering a second too long before she turned back to her visitor. Evening, I said quietly, pretending to pass by. She smiled faintly but didn't answer. The door closed soon after, her silhouette fading behind frosted glass. A minute later, the door opened again. You could have waited inside, she said, her voice lower now. I didn't want to interrupt. You already did, she teased, but there was no edge to it. Just a tired fondness. Inside, her living room smelled of coffee and rain-damp paper. Books stacked on the armchair, candles half burned. The kind of quiet that makes every heartbeat sound too loud. Your friend seemed nice, I said, mostly to fill the space. She's a colleague. She'd talk. About us? There is no us, she said quickly, too quickly. Then softer. Not the way people would assume. The words stung more than I wanted to admit. She must have seen it because she sighed, rubbing the back of her neck. You're young. People notice that. They make stories. I nodded, pretending it didn't matter. And what story would they make? The one neither of us wants to explain. Silence stretched thin between us. Outside, thunder rolled, distant but heavy. She stepped closer, maybe to change the subject, maybe not. You're drenched, she murmured, brushing at my sleeve. Her fingers barely grazed my arm, but it was enough to stop everything else in the room. I should go, I said, even though I didn't move. Then go, she whispered, though her hand stayed where it was. Our eyes met, and for the first time either of us looked away. Every breath felt measured. Her lips parted, maybe to speak, maybe to close the distance that had somehow vanished between us. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. The sound shattered the moment. She flinched slightly, pulling back as if the contact burned. The name flashing on the screen, Maya, school, lingered for a heartbeat too long before she silenced it. I can't, she said finally. Not like this. I nodded, though my pulse didn't. I wasn't going to, I know, she said softly. That's the problem. The rain against the window grew louder, urgent. She turned toward it, but I could see her reflection in the glass, her lips parted, her breath shallow, her hand gripping the counter like she needed to stay grounded. I took a step forward. She didn't move away this time. Our shoulders almost touched, our reflections merging faintly in the glass. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't undo everything. She exhaled, trembling just enough for me to notice. Then, almost too quietly to hear, "Stay, just until the rain stops." The storm outside answered for us, long, unbroken, refusing to let go. The rain had stopped hours ago, but neither of us had moved. The air between us felt too still, too full, like the pause before a song's final note. She sat on the couch, one leg tucked beneath her fingers tracing the rim of her empty glass as if to keep from fidgeting. I leaned against the wall opposite her, arms folded, trying to look anywhere but at her, and failing. "I thought you were going to leave," she said finally, not looking up. "I tried," I said. "Didn't make it past the door." A small smile touched her lips, quick and almost sad. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because you mean them." Her honesty caught me off guard. It wasn't accusation, more like surrender. "Maybe I do," I said. She shook her head. "You don't know what that means yet." I crossed the room before I could think better of it. "You think I haven't thought about this?" Her eyes lifted, wide, cautious, drawn. "You shouldn't have to think about me at all." "But I do." That landed between us, heavy and real. Her breathing changed. She looked down at her hands as though she could hide behind them. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I've built my life around not needing anyone. And then you." She stopped herself, pressing her lips together. "Then me what?" Her silence said everything. I crouched beside the couch, close enough to see the pulse at her throat. Close enough to feel her warmth reach me. "You don't have to keep pretending you don't feel it," I said quietly. She turned toward me, the movements slow, deliberate. I could see every flicker of conflict in her face, want, fear, guilt. "Do you have any idea what people would say?" she asked. "I don't care." "You should." I almost laughed. "You care enough for both of us." Her eyes met mine then, no guard, no retreat. "Don't make this harder than it already is." "It already is," I said. For a moment neither of us moved. Then she reached up, tentative, trembling, and brushed a strand of wet hair from my forehead. Her fingers lingered at my temple, tracing down to my jaw. "Why do you do that?" I asked. "What?" "Touch me like you're afraid I'll disappear." Her hand dropped, but I caught it before it fell away completely. The small contact, skin against skin, felt electric, grounding and dangerous all at once. "You should let go," she said. "I can't." Her breath caught. I felt it against my cheek. Seconds blurred, her perfume, faint jasmine and rain, her heartbeat, uneven under her ribs, the distance between our mouths shrinking until air itself seemed to vanish. "I can't do this," she whispered, eyes flicking to my lips. "Then tell me to stop." But she didn't. Her lips parted slightly, just enough for the smallest sound, my name, to slip out, trembling. And then, a knock. Sharp. 2 times. She froze. We both did. Her hand slipped from mine, her expression changing in an instant, desire collapsing into panic. "Don't move," she whispered. The knocking came again, louder this time. I stood there, heart pounding, while she straightened her blouse, wiped at her lips though nothing had happened, and whispered without looking back. "This never almost happened." The knock still echoed in my chest long after the door closed. It wasn't who I'd feared, not a friend, not a neighbor. Just a delivery, a box she'd forgotten she'd ordered. Still, something in the air had shifted. The spell was broken, but the ache it left behind wasn't. She moved through the room quickly, almost too quickly, tidying what didn't need tidying, the way people do when they're trying not to feel something. "You should go," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah," I murmured. But neither of us moved. Finally, she stopped, fingers resting on the edge of the table. Her knuckles were white. "What did I just do?" she whispered. "Nothing," I said, though we both knew that wasn't true. She laughed once, quiet, bitter, not at me but at herself. "I'm not built for this kind of mistake anymore." Her words landed like a slap wrapped in silk. Before I could answer, her phone lit up again. A new message flashed across the screen. "Heard you had company. Should we talk?" Her expression drained of color. "Who's that?" I asked. She turned the phone over, face down. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. She hesitated too long. "You don't have to lie," I said softly. She met my gaze then, cornered, almost defiant. "It's my ex-husband." The air went colder. "I thought you thought he was gone," she finished. "So did I. He still calls. Checks in. Pretends to care." Her voice shook, and for the first time I saw something fragile behind the calm she always carried. "I didn't tell you because this," she gestured between us, "was never supposed to matter." The words stung more than they should have. I took a small step toward her, then stopped, unsure if she'd want me near. "It matters," I said anyway. "You can lie to him, to yourself, but not to me." She flinched, not because of what I said, but because she knew it was true. Her hand trembled as she reached for the glass she'd left behind. The sound of it setting down, sharp, too loud, filled the silence. "I shouldn't have let you stay," she said. "But you did." "I know." Our eyes locked again, all tension, no space. She stepped back, but her heel caught on the rug, and I instinctively reached out. My hand found her waist, hers found my wrist. Neither of us pulled away. Her pulse raced beneath my fingers. The nearness of her, warm, conflicted, real, made it impossible to think straight. "Do you know what he'd say if he saw us like this?" she asked, voice trembling. "I don't care what he'd say. But I do," she whispered. "Because he'd be right. I swore I'd never make the same mistake twice." "And what if this isn't a mistake?" I asked. For a heartbeat, she didn't breathe. Then she whispered, low, defeated, honest, "Then I don't know who I am anymore." The words hung there, raw and final. And then, without another sound, she turned away, but not before brushing against me, slow enough that it felt intentional. At the doorway, she paused. "Tomorrow," she said. "Come by tomorrow. I need to decide what this is." She opened the door before I could knock. The morning light hit her face just right, soft, washed in gold, making her look younger, unguarded. But her eyes betrayed it. They were tired, like she'd spent the whole night arguing with herself. "Come in," she said quietly. Her voice wasn't cold, but careful, as if a single wrong word could tip something over. The house smelled like rain and coffee again. Same as that first night. Everything felt familiar, but nothing did. "I didn't sleep," she said, moving toward the window. "Me neither," I admitted. She nodded, still facing away. "I kept thinking about how this started. You fixing the lights. You standing there, not knowing what to say. And now?" She turned to face me then. "Now I know exactly what to say. I just don't know if I should." I stepped closer slowly. "Then don't say it. Just," Show me what you mean. Her breath caught. That's the problem. You make it sound easy. It doesn't feel easy. No, she whispered. It doesn't. We stood there, close enough that the faint brush of air between us carried warmth. Every movement, every hesitation, felt amplified. Her hand twitched, uncertain. My pulse answered. You're not supposed to look at me like that, she said softly. Then tell me to stop. I've been trying. The words barely left her lips before I reached up, not touching her, just tracing the space beside her cheek with my fingertips. She didn't move. I told myself. She murmured, that I wouldn't let this happen again. That I wouldn't let someone make me feel like I was 20 and foolish. You're not foolish, I said. Then why do I feel like it every time you're near? Her voice trembled, but her body leaned closer, the smallest surrender. I could feel the heat of her skin, the steady rhythm of her breath brushing my throat. My hand rose to her jaw, hovering for a second before finally resting there, gentle, tentative. Say something, I whispered. Her eyes searched mine, for strength, for permission, for a reason not to. And when she finally spoke, it came out like confession and apology all at once. I can't keep pretending I don't want this. The air cracked open between us. She moved first, or maybe I did, it didn't matter. The world shrank to the inches that separated us. And then she stopped. Just before everything broke. Her forehead rested against mine, breath shaky. If we cross this line, she whispered, I can't go back to pretending. Then don't. Her eyes closed. You don't understand. I've spent years keeping my life still. You're the first thing that's made me want to ruin it again. A tear caught at the corner of her lashes, though she smiled, small, resigned, brave. I needed to know, she said finally, if I still could feel this much. You can. We stayed there, forehead to forehead, hearts unsteady, the silence loud with everything we didn't say. When she finally pulled away, it wasn't retreat, it was relief. She looked at me like someone seeing the end and the beginning at once. Now I understand, she whispered. Why people risk everything for the wrong person. The days after that morning felt quieter, but not the same kind of quiet as before. Her blinds stayed open now. Sometimes I'd see her through the window, reading near the couch, her expression soft but distracted. Other times, she'd glance up and catch me watching. Neither of us looked away as quickly anymore. It was late evening when she finally knocked on my door. No rain this time, just the cool stillness of spring settling into the hallway. I opened the door, and there she was, hair loose, a faint smile on her lips that didn't try to hide anything. Can I come in? She asked. You never have to ask. She stepped inside slowly, taking in the small space. My apartment was nothing compared to hers, fewer books, fewer signs of a life already lived. Still, when she sat on the couch, it looked right. Like she'd been there before, in another version of us. I've been thinking, she said after a while. About what you said. I sat beside her, close enough that our knees brushed. Which part? The part where you said you didn't care what people thought. I smiled faintly. Still true. She exhaled, eyes on her hands. I wish I could say the same. But maybe I'm learning to. She hesitated, then reached for my hand. The touch was small, uncertain, but her thumb brushed across my skin like she'd been wanting to do it for a long time. You make me feel seen, she said softly. Not young. Not old. Just here. I turned my hand over, lacing my fingers through hers. And you make me feel like I'm not guessing all the time. Her laugh was quiet, almost shy. That's new for me too. We sat like that for a while, the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. Outside, the last of the sunset spilled through the window, painting everything gold and fading pink. The world felt still enough to belong only to us. When she leaned closer, it wasn't with hesitation this time. Her head rested lightly on my shoulder, her hands still in mine. This isn't easy, she murmured. I don't want easy. Good, she whispered, smiling against my sleeve. Neither do I. Her hair brushed my neck, and I could feel the warmth of her breath, the steady rhythm of her heart syncing with mine. You know, she said after a long pause, for someone who's supposed to be the mature one, I think I'm the one who keeps breaking the rules. I laughed softly. Then maybe they're the wrong rules. She tilted her head up, eyes meeting mine. No tension this time. No pretending. Just quiet understanding, two people who'd finally stopped running from what was already theirs. When I kissed her forehead, she closed her eyes and whispered, almost to herself, I'm not afraid anymore. And neither was I. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?